As I prepared myself for today's task, I thought, okay, this is going to be Mick Fleetwood, has spent decades defining rock and roll with Fleetwood Mac, taking the band from its blues roots to its current status as one of the most successful bands in rock and roll history. But as he began his final tour, something unexpected happened. This wasn't just another compilation of classic songs, there was a deeper reason behind it, and it was kept secret for a long time. What drove him to perform on stage for the last time? Mick Fleetwood was born on June 24, 1947, in the small town of Redruth, Cornwall, known for its tin mines. His family moved to Egypt when he was about 6 months old because his father was in the Royal Air Force. Living near the pyramids and listening to the energetic beats of Egyptian music had a profound impact on Mick, though he didn't know it at the time. When he was 13 years old, his life was about to change. He was disinterested in school and spent most of his time tapping out rhythms on anything he could find. His parents saw this and bought him his first drum kit. Despite its cheap price, Mick's life revolved around it. His father, who had a secret jazz passion, taught him his first lessons and showed him the basic rhythms that would later be used in some of Mick Fleetwood's most popular songs. However, schoolwork was still challenging. In the year he turned 15, he had his first crush. There was a day when he had had enough. After a rough morning, he skipped school, knelt under a tree, and vowed to himself that he would follow his heart in music no matter what. In an unusual move for that time, his parents encouraged him. They let him drop out of school and move in with his sister to London. It was a brave move, but it allowed Mick to focus on what mattered most. In London, he started his musical training, and at night he would frequent nightclubs. As Mick soaked up the blues sounds of the city, his luck started to turn when he met Peter Bardens, a piano player who lived nearby. One day, Peter overheard Mick practicing and went to his house to knock on his door. Inquiring if Mick would be interested in joining his band, the Cheneys, Mick finally got his break. A few weeks later, they played their first gig at a famous London blues club. By the end of 1963, the Cheneys had been performing in bars all over London. They were even invited to open for the Rolling Stones once. Mick was so impressed by Charlie Watts, the drummer, that he studied him closely all night long. That experience had a lasting impact on Mick's drumming style. In 1964, the Cheneys were opening for another big band, the Yardbirds. The Yardbirds featured a teenage Eric Clapton on guitar. Mick and Clapton became friends after Clapton became aware of Mick's drumming. That same night, John McVie, a bassist who had played with John Mayall's Blues Breakers, was introduced to Mick. Neither of them knew at the time that they would later go on to form one of the most iconic rock and roll bands of all time. After a while, Mick decided to quit the Cheneys and join a new band called the Bow Street Runners. The band had recently won a big music competition on television, which brought them a recording contract and a lot of attention. Mick hoped that this would be his lucky break. One of their singles was recorded. However, it was not a success, and arguments among the group members caused Mick to leave after only a few months of being a part of it. The next major event in Mick's life happened in 1965 when he met John Mayall at a London club. Mayall was also the leader of a famous blues band that included Eric Clapton on guitar. During a break at one of their performances, Mick introduced himself to the band and even got a chance to play a few songs with them. After a few years, Mayall invited Mick to join his band officially because he loved what he heard. Playing with Mayall was like going to a blues class. Although Mick listened to a lot of old records by famous blues musicians, his vices became worse at the same rate as his talent. As he drank more, his playing suffered. That night, Mayall fired him after a bad performance. Though it was a bad time, it turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Guitarist Peter Green also left Mayall's band shortly after. That night, Mick and Peter decided to form a band, but Peter wanted John McVie, who had been in the Blues Breakers band before, to be their bassist. John was determined not to leave his secure job with Mayall, but Peter came up with a clever scheme to convince him. The band was named Fleetwood Mac, a combination of Mick's surname and a part of John's name. The plan failed at first, so they started with a temporary bassist. In the event that John changed his mind, Bob Brunning had already promised to resign. Fortunately, Peter's plan worked, and a few months later, John joined the band, completing the original lineup. When Fleetwood Mac first formed, they were a blues band heavily influenced by the Chicago blues sound. Their music had a raw and soulful quality, driven by Peter's guitar skills and voice. They recorded their debut album in 1968 in just 3 days and spent £700 on it, despite its simplicity. It was a successful album. It stayed in the UK charts for 37 weeks, peaking at number 4. The first song they released didn't do well, but their second single, Black Magic Woman, was successful and peaked at number 37. After a while, Santana turned it into a global hit. Then they released their third single, an instrumental called Albatross, which became an enormous hit. It topped the UK charts in early 1969 and stayed there for 22 weeks. Introduced the band to a large audience. Despite making great music, there were some problems. Peter Green started to feel the pressures of fame and started using LSD more and more, which caused friction within the group. Despite these problems, Fleetwood Mac worked hard and kept their creative juices flowing. From 1967 to 1970, the band released 4 albums and several critically acclaimed singles. During their legendary live shows, Peter would occasionally play 45-minute guitar solos that left the crowd in awe. On December 31, 1974, Mick Fleetwood called guitarist Lindsey Buckingham and asked if she would join Fleetwood Mac. Buckingham accepted, but only on the condition that Fleetwood's girlfriend Stevie Nicks also join. Fleetwood was not interested in adding Nicks, but he agreed to the condition. On January 1st, the band officially became Fleetwood Mac. With the official addition of Buckingham and Nicks in 1975, Fleetwood Mac became one of the most successful bands in music history. The band had already established a reputation for British blues before the addition of Nicks, but with Buckingham's guitar wizardry and Nicks' otherworldly voice and unique stage presence, the sound of the band transformed into an exciting fusion of rock, pop, and folk. The inspiration for this transformation came from producer Keith Olsen, who played a track from Buckingham and Nicks' album that set the stage for the rest. It was Fleetwood's album Frozen Love. Buckingham's guitar playing so impressed him that he immediately called him and invited him to join the band. In 1975, the band's self-titled album was published, featuring the newly formed lineup. The album was a huge hit, full of infectious songs that showed the band's new direction. Christine McVie's upbeat songs like Over My Head and Say You Love Maine became huge hits almost immediately. Nicks' eerie cover of Rhiannon added to the record's mystical atmosphere. While their earlier albums failed to make much of an impact in the US, this one sold over 7 million copies, a considerable improvement. Then, in 1977, rumors came out and it was all downhill from there. The album went on to sell over 45 million copies worldwide, making it one of the best-selling albums of all time. Every single one of its tracks, including Go Your Own Way, Dreams Don't Stop, and You Make Loving Fun, was a gigantic hit, due to the deeply personal nature of each song. Whilst recording the album, the band members went through a series of breakups, arguments, and turmoil, all of which seemed to have been turned into great music. The members of the band were in a state of constant disarray. After almost 10 years of being together, Buckingham and Nicks decided to end their relationship. Despite their constant fighting in the studio, songs like Go Your Own Way and Dreams were influenced by their sadness. Additionally, Christine and John McVie were splitting up. Christine wrote the song You Make Loving Fun about her affair, but she lied to John and said it was about her dog to avoid further trouble. Mick Fleetwood was also dealing with his own problems, including a secret affair he was having with Nicks. The band members' personal lives were a shambles, but their music was genuinely magical. Fast forward to 2018 and Fleetwood Mac made a shocking decision that stunned everyone. Lindsey Buckingham had been a vital part of the band since 1974, but she was let go because she and the rest of the band couldn't agree on when their tour would be. Stevie Nicks and the others didn't want to wait too long, but Lindsey was adamant about postponing it until the second half of 2019. By then, Stevie had finished her own long solo tour and was ready to move on to the next phase of her career. Things between Lindsey and Stevie had been getting hotter for a while, but there had been no resolution in sight. Despite the fact that he had written some of the band's most popular songs, the members of Fleetwood Mac ultimately decided that they could no longer work together. This was not an easy decision, but they had been through lineup changes before the group had already gone through 13 changes. In an unexpected move, the band joined forces with Crowded House singer Neil Finn and Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers guitarist Mike Campbell to replace Lindsay. The fans were surprised, but the new members blended in like a glove. Christine McVie said that it was as if they'd known each other forever. The energy that Mike and Neil brought to the band opened up new avenues for the band's musical expression. When Stevie expressed interest in singing older songs from when the band was younger before Lindsay and she joined, she jumped at the chance. For example, they planned to play Rattlesnake Shake and Station Man, which had not been performed for decades. By the end of April, the band had begun to take pictures together as the new configuration. In the midst of this, Mick Fleetwood called it a fresh start. In June of 2018. The new lineup started rehearsals at a massive California location 5 days a week. Over the course of 2 months, the band performed nearly 60 songs, some of which hadn't been performed live in previous years. Stevie was incredibly excited when it was time to play Black Magic Woman, a song written by their first guitarist and dating back to their early days. Hello, this is Peter Green. Mike Campbell's guitar technique brought a new and exciting sound to the old classics, and Neil Finn breathed new life into Lindsay's songs. By August, they had reduced the selection to about 24 songs, a mix of popular and obscure ones. In September, the band began full production rehearsals at the Honda Center in Anaheim. During these rehearsals, they collaborated on the stage design, lighting, and every other aspect of the tour. A walkway was built inside the new stage, allowing the musicians to get closer to the audience. A total of 52 shows across North America were part of the first leg of the tour, which began on October 3, 2018 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and ended on April 5th, featuring hits like The Chain and Go Your Own Way, as well as surprises like Tell Me All the Things You Do. The production also made use of over 200 moving lights and a massive screen for the visual effects. With a few tweaks here and there, the 2019 Philadelphia show still managed to sell out in record time, proving that fans were still pumped to see Fleetwood Mac. It's evident that Mick Fleetwood is still a major player in the music industry thanks to his world tours. His most recent tour took the magic of Fleetwood Mac to fans all over the globe, touching down in 8 different countries. Mick's music touched people in places like Dubai and Monte Carlo, among many others. Also, he's a big fan of tribute bands like Rumors of Fleetwood Mac, which play sold-out shows all over the world. Fans can relate to the shows no matter where they are. It's proof that Mick Fleetwood's music is accessible to everyone, no matter who they are or where they're from. Additionally, these tours aren't little. During one tour, Mick performed at over 80 concerts, each one planned to give fans the perfect blend of Mick Fleetwood's famous songs and lesser-known gems. The Chain and Dreams are never-ending crowd pleasers, but Mick keeps in mind that the band is originally from the blues. To honor the band's roots and original leader, Peter Green, he includes songs like Albatross. These shows are more than just concerts, they're a chance to relive decades of music history. Those who attend the event feel like they were a part of something truly extraordinary. Meanwhile, in his personal life, Mick has had many ups and downs, especially in regards to his relationships with his family and his romantic partners. In 1970, he was married to Jenny Boyd, who was 22 years old at the time. Jenny was the younger sister of Pattie Boyd, who was married to George Harrison of the Beatles. During their wedding, which was a small ceremony in London, Mick was 23 years old. The start of a happy life together seemed to be the beginning of a great life, but things quickly became problematic. His music career was booming, and he was already insanely busy. Surprisingly, he found that balancing that with his family life was far more challenging than he had imagined. In 1973, Mick's world came crashing down when he found out that Jenny was having an affair with Bob Weston, who was both a guitarist in Fleetwood Mac and one of his closest friends.